The last thing I remember clearly is the sound of the crowd laughing, and then the sound stopped. One moment I was signing a paper cup for a little girl named Poppy who wanted to keep it forever, and the next moment, the stage lights were gone, and there were hands on me that did not belong to anyone who liked me. I remember the smell of oil and metal. I remember someone speaking in a language I was never taught, low and fast, like they were counting down to something. I remember being lifted off the ground and thinking, very stupidly, that my shoes were going to fall off. Then there is a gap, a long, dark gap where I was not myself, where I was just a body being moved from one place to another like luggage nobody wanted to claim. When the gap ends, I am lying on something soft, and there is a steady beeping sound beside my head, and a woman with tired eyes and kind hands is adjusting a tube near my arm. She notices I am awake and her whole face changes, like a light switching on behind her eyes. Elena, her name tag says. She does not smile right away. She just looks at me for a second too long, like she is making sure I am real. "You're at Riverside General," she says. "You're safe now. Do you know your name?" I tell her my name, and my voice comes out cracked and small, like a radio left out in the rain. She nods, writes something down, and tells me not to try to sit up yet. I ask her what happened. She hesitates. That hesitation tells me more than any answer could. I ask again, she says, gently, that some people hurt me, that I was found 2 days ago in a storage container near the old shipping docks, and that a fisherman named Callum heard something knocking against the metal and called it in because it did not sound like an animal. She says the doctors are still checking to make sure everything inside me is working the way it should. She says I am lucky. I do not feel lucky. I feel like a cup that has been dropped and glued back together, still holding water, but everyone can see the cracks. I ask her if anyone knows who did this. She looks toward the door, like she is checking that it is closed, and then she says something that does not make sense to me yet. "It doesn't matter who did it anymore," she says. "Not the way you're thinking. Everybody already knows." I want to ask what she means, but a monitor beside me starts beeping in a new rhythm, and she has to step away to check it, and I am left alone with the ceiling tiles and the taste of medicine on my tongue. I sleep again, or something like sleep, and when I wake up, the room has changed. There is a soldier standing outside my door now. Not a police officer, a soldier, in a uniform I recognize from documentaries about human history, standing with his hands folded and his eyes forward, like a statue that breathes. I ask Elena why there is a soldier outside my room. She tells me it is just a precaution. I ask precaution against what? She does not answer that one either. A young man comes in to check my vitals. His name tag says Owen. He is gentler than he needs to be, the way people are gentle with something they are afraid of breaking twice. While he works, I notice his hands are shaking slightly, just at the fingertips. I ask him if he is nervous. He laughs, a short, unhappy laugh, and says he has not slept in a day and a half, because his brother got called up for deployment at 3 in the morning, and nobody would tell him where. "Deployment," I say. "Where is he going?" Owen looks at me the way you look at someone who has just woken up from a coma and does not know what year it is. He says carefully that nobody knows exactly, only that half the base emptied out overnight, and that his brother texted him one line before his phone got taken away. The line said, "Tell Mom I love her, and don't worry, we're doing this for the little guy." I ask who the little guy is. Owen just looks at me. He does not answer. He finishes checking my vitals and leaves quickly, like the question hurt him. That night, or what I believe is night, since the room has no windows, Elena brings me a small screen so I can watch something to pass the time. She hesitates before turning it on, the same hesitation from before, and then she turns it on anyway because I ask her to. The picture that fills the screen is my own face. It is a photograph from months ago, taken at some public event, where I am laughing at something a child said, and my whole body is caught mid-laugh, harmless and open. Under the photograph, in letters too large and too red, are words I do not want to read out loud. Elena reads them for me in a voice that keeps trying to stay calm and does not quite manage it. The words say that citizens across the world gathered outside government buildings within hours of the footage leaking. They say that world leaders, who had spent years disagreeing about nearly everything, held an emergency session that lasted less than 40 minutes, before every single one of them agreed on the same thing. They say that flights were grounded not by law, but because pilots refused to fly until they knew what was happening. They say a dock worker in a country I have never visited refused to load a single shipping crate until his union confirmed the news was true, and that thousands of other dock workers, in ports I have never heard of, did the same thing without being asked. I ask Elena to turn it off. She does. We sit in silence for a while, and I notice she is holding my hand, and I do not remember when that started. I ask her, quietly, if this is my fault. She looks at me, like I have said something absurd and painful at the same time. No, she says, it is not your fault that people hurt you. It was never going to be your fault. But she stops there, like there is a second half to that sentence she is choosing not to say. I press her. I tell her I need to know what is happening outside this room, because not knowing is worse than anything they could tell me. She studies my face for a long moment, and then she tells me, plainly, without softening it, because she says, I deserve honesty more than comfort right now. She tells me that by the time the sun rose the next morning, formal declarations had already been issued. Not threats, not warnings, declarations. She tells me that within a single night, defense counsels that usually take months to agree on a single sentence had signed unified statements. She tells me military reservists who had been out of uniform for years showed up at recruitment offices before the offices even opened, standing in lines that wrapped around city blocks in the dark, waiting for doors that had not yet unlocked. I ask her why. I ask her, almost pleading, why any of this is about me. I am not a soldier. I am not a leader. I am just someone who came here to learn, to build friendships between my people and hers, to hand out paper cups and sign them for children named Poppy. Elena is quiet for a long moment. Then she says something I will carry with me for the rest of my life, however long that turns out to be. That's exactly why, she says. You never asked for any of this. You never tried to be important. You just were kind, over and over, without expecting anything back, and people noticed. People here don't rally behind power. They rally behind the ones who never had any, and never wanted any. That's what got hurt. Not a diplomat, not an official, someone gentle, and people cannot forgive that. I do not know what to say to that. I stare at the ceiling and think about the fisherman named Callum, who heard a sound that did not seem like an animal and decided to check anyway, on a dark dock, alone, at night. I think about Owen's brother, gone before dawn, leaving behind one sentence for his mother. I think about the dock workers refusing to move a single crate. A few hours later, a man in a formal coat comes to see me. He introduces himself as Director Whitfield, and he says he represents a small council formed specifically to oversee my recovery and my protection. He is polite, careful, and there is something in his eyes that looks like grief wearing a professional face. He tells me that he needs to ask me some questions about what happened, for the official record, but that I can stop at any point and he will leave immediately. I appreciate that he says this before asking anything at all. I answer what I can. Much of it is still fog. He writes very little. Mostly he listens. And when I finish, he closes his notebook and sits back in his chair. I ask him the question I have been afraid to ask anyone. I ask him if there is going to be a war because of me. He does not flinch. He does not try to comfort me with a smaller word. He says plainly that there already is one, that it began the moment the footage was verified, long before dawn, long before anyone thought to ask my permission or my opinion on the matter. I ask him to stop it. I tell him I am alive. I am recovering. I do not want anyone else to be hurt because of what happened to me. I tell him this with everything I have left in my voice, which is not very much. He looks at me with something like sympathy, and something like sorrow, and something like an apology he cannot actually give me. It's not something that can be undone with a request, he says. It was never really a decision made by any one person sitting behind a desk. It was a decision made by millions of people at once, in their kitchens, on their phones, in their cars on the way to work, the moment they saw what happened to you. By the time any official signed anything, it was already true. The paperwork just caught up to the feeling. I ask him what feeling. He says one word, ours. He explains, in a careful and quiet voice, that somewhere along the way, without any ceremony or announcement, I stopped being a visitor to this planet and became something closer to family, at least in the minds of the people who watched me grow up on their screens, who saw me learn to ride a bicycle badly and laugh about it, who saw me try their food and make faces, who saw me cry once, publicly, at a memorial for people I never met, simply because grief is something every living thing understands. He says humans do not extend that kind of belonging lightly, but once it is extended, it is absolute. And threatening, it invites a response that has very little to do with logic, and everything to do with instinct. I ask him if that instinct can be reasoned with. He says honestly that it rarely needs to be, because it usually agrees with reason anyway. He says the people who hurt me miscalculated something simple. They assumed that because I was small, and gentle, and unarmed, that I was undefended. He says that was the mistake. He says I was never undefended. I simply did not know, until now, what my defense actually looked like. Elena comes back in as he is leaving, and she sits beside my bed again, and I ask her the same question I asked Director Whitfield, because I need to hear it from someone who is not speaking in official language. Is it too late to stop this? I ask her. She takes my hand again, the same gentle grip from before, and she says something simple. She says that it was never about stopping it, and that maybe I am asking the wrong question. She says the real question is, what happens after? And that the answer to that question is still mine to shape, if I choose to use my voice once I am strong enough. I think about that for a long time after she leaves. I think about Poppy and her paper cup. I think about Owen's brother, somewhere far from home, carrying a message meant for his mother. I think about the fisherman on the dark dock, who decided a strange sound was worth checking. I think about how easy it would have been for any one of them to look away. None of them did. Days pass. My body heals slowly, the way bodies do, one small improvement at a time, one step further out of bed, one longer walk down the hallway with Elena beside me in case my legs give out. Each day, someone tells me a little more about what is happening beyond these walls. And each day, the picture becomes both larger and stranger than I expected. Cities I have never visited hold vigils that turn into something steadier than grief, something closer to resolve. Letters arrive at the hospital by the thousands, more than the staff can read aloud, written by children, by grandmothers, by soldiers waiting for transport, by strangers who simply wanted me to know that they were thinking of me and that they were, in their own private ways, doing something about it. One afternoon, Owen brings me a small stack of these letters, chosen carefully, he says, to be the gentlest ones. I read one from a boy who says he is not allowed to skip school, but that he wore my colors to class anyway, because his teacher said it was allowed, if it was for a good reason. I read one from an old woman who says she has outlived 2 wars already and never expected to feel grateful for a third. But that gratitude is exactly what she feels, because it means someone still remembers what kindness is worth defending. I ask Owen if his brother has been in contact. He tells me, with a small and tired smile, that his brother sent one more message 2 nights ago. Only 4 words. It said, "We're doing fine," and it made him cry harder than the first message had, because fine, coming from his brother, was the most honest word he could have chosen. On the day I am finally strong enough to sit up on my own, without the machines, without the tube in my arm, Elena wheels me to a window on the higher floor of the hospital, the first window I have seen since I woke up. Outside, the sky is a pale, ordinary blue, the kind of sky that does not look like anything historic is happening beneath it. But down on the street, I can see people gathered quietly along the sidewalk, holding signs with my name on them, not shouting, not angry, just standing there, waiting, the way people wait outside a hospital for someone they love to come home. I ask Elena to open the window, just a little. She does. The sound from below drifts up, soft and layered, hundreds of quiet conversations blending into something that is not quite noise and not quite silence. I sit there for a long time, watching them, and I think about what Director Whitfield said, about instinct and reason, agreeing without needing to be asked. I think about what Elena said, about the question that still belongs to me. I think about the little girl named Poppy, who probably does not fully understand any of this, who is probably just glad, in the simple way children are glad, that I am alive. I do not know everything that is coming, I do not know how long this will last, or what it will cost the people standing quietly on that sidewalk, or the ones already far from home carrying messages for their mothers. But I know this much, clearly, for the first time since I woke up in this bed. They did not go to war because someone ordered them to. They went because somewhere along the way, without meaning to, I had become theirs, and they had become mine, and neither side had ever needed to say it out loud until the moment it was tested. I close my eyes, and for the first time since the dark gap where I was taken, I am not afraid. I am only grateful, and quietly, steadily, ready to stand beside them for whatever comes next.